Good evening. I'm Julio Elizalde, Artistic Director of the Olympic Music Festival, and welcome back to Behind the Notes, an educational discussion about our upcoming concert. This is Matthew Zalkind, cello, and Stella Chen, violin. I'm really glad that they're able to join us for this very different kind of season this summer. But we're really excited to perform on August 30th at 5 p.m. We'll be playing Opus 1, number 1, the first published piece by Beethoven, and then the Archduke Trio Opus 97, which was his final large-scale piano trio. A lot of people have been asking us about what exactly we're doing, because this is so different than the normal way that you would do chamber music, especially during the summer. And Stella, since this is your first time here, what has this whole experience been like for you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here. I think it's actually my first time playing music with other people since March 12th. And so it's just such a blessing. I play music to play music with others and to share music with others. And so even though it's sad or speaking to you from YouTube, it's so great to be playing live with these guys. It's been an incredible process rehearsing, because these are two of my favorite pieces, especially the Archduke Trio. I remember the first time I heard it, there were just tears rolling down my cheeks, and so it was very, very special to hear Julio play that opening for the first time, and it's been really great. Yeah.
Matt, do you want to talk about, since Matt is a regular here at the Olympic Music Festival, maybe you can talk about how different it's been from last year to this year.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're so fortunate that this happened, that all of this happened, and that the board of the Olympic Music Festival and the mission of the music festival is just so strong that we had to make music here in Port Townsend this summer, that we were not going to let this summer go by without making some music together. So I'm so relieved that we were able to do that. It truly was a highlight of the summer for me, and I think we all share similar feelings about that. But as Stella mentioned, we have not been playing music with other people. We have been, being very safe, of course, and playing in our own homes and dreaming of a time we could get together again and do this. So it's been wonderful. Usually in the rehearsal process, there is a very clear end date of a performance for an audience. And there's a buzz and an excitement, and it's part of a routine. We have it kind of down to a system without even realizing it. And in this particular instance, the final performance is for a camera. And so it's a different sensation. We have to be very, very mindful of all of the people watching and all of the energy that you all bring to the concert experience. So we have to kind of recreate that and be aware of it. And so that has been a really interesting experience. But in a way, it's also been very familiar, because this is what we do. We get together and we work very hard on a piece of music, and we realize an ideal, and then we share it with people. And so that's exactly what we've done here.
Mm-hmm. And one thing for me that I think is a big eye-opener is to be able, fortunately we have a lot of great equipment, beautiful camera that you're watching us on right now, and great microphones, and to be able to review the product before we release it, to really check in and make sure we're doing what Beethoven marked. And that's kind of a luxury that I've never, you don't often get to enjoy that feeling. Usually when you're doing serious recordings, you face that. But in chamber music, you don't normally have the opportunity. There's too little time. And although I guess in this situation there was even less time to prepare these pieces, I don't know how that works, but it was nice just to absolutely focus on these pieces and just to explore them and grow with them in a very fast and efficient way. Yeah. And actually, Matt and I have played together a number of times, but Stella has never worked with either of us. So, Stella, what was that like?
It was awesome. It was awesome.
You could tell them the bad stuff too.
You could tell the truth.
They're horrible. No, no. It was so fun and easy. It felt like, you know, we've known each other for years, and I, you know, have seen recordings of theirs and very much admire their playing. I think, you know, the trio writing is so intricate, and just being able to feed off the energy of these guys live is so fun. And then, you know, just the rehearsal process was very, very natural and organic and easy. I think we are all, you know, very much just 100% devoted to the music first and foremost, and we'll do whatever it takes to make it alive. And I hope I was okay to work with as well. That's
it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
This whole week was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. I'm gonna miss you guys.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
This is all coming to an end so fast.
Absolutely.
So to help you prepare for your listening to the concert on Sunday, I thought it might be helpful if we individually spoke about our relationship with our instrument that we play and Beethoven, and what he wrote for us, and how our instrument basically evolved thanks to his compositions. And Stella, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so Beethoven is probably my favorite composer, along with Schubert, but he really does not make things easy for us. I think he writes music for the music. And so there's no pretense of virtuosity, but there's also no making things easier to navigate. The Beethoven Violin Concerto, for example, is one of, you know, the staples, the centerpieces of the violin repertoire. And I think I would consider it the hardest violin concerto. I know Mr. Perlman considers it the hardest concerto. It's made up of almost, you know, all scales and arpeggios, but the intonation just has to be perfect, or else the piece doesn't work. And it's a masterpiece that is so difficult yet so pristine. And I kind of feel that way about a lot of Beethoven's pieces, especially these two trios. Yeah. And I think it's very interesting that he decided to make the piano trio his Opus 1, number 1. He was a very, you know, painstakingly detailed composer, and I think he really wanted to make a mark with this first E-flat trio that we'll be playing, and he certainly did that, and it shows.
Yeah. Matt, you want to talk about the cello and Beethoven?
Sure.
We already talked a little bit last time during our talk about the cello sonatas.
You might have caught a little bit about the phrase that I used for Beethoven and his relationship to the cello, and the way cellists feel about Beethoven is that, you know, as I said, he really liberated the cello. And what I mean by that is the cello used to be only sort of a supportive instrument, continuo, or in trios written by Haydn, or something that mostly mimicked the left hand of the piano. So we didn't really have a lot to do. And of course, Beethoven completely did away with that and said the cello needs its own and very strong part. And you see, even from Opus 1, number 1, which was an early work, which was very influenced by Haydn and the classical style, that the cello still really does have a very independent role. So we're very happy about that, and it makes it more fun for us to play. But Beethoven was also, he knew really how to write very impressively challenging melodies for the cello. So every one of the later Beethoven trios, as you'll see from the Archduke, keep your eyes open for a notoriously challenging solo in the last movement, as he tends to do. Lots of very comfortable writing, and then boom, some of the hardest, most challenging writing we have in our repertoire, and that's Beethoven in a nutshell, and with the trios. So
yeah. For the pianist, we're lucky that he wrote so much for the piano. So he wrote the 32 piano sonatas, the 5 piano concertos, and these trios that we're playing, I think, are incredible in terms of the craftsmanship, about just texture. Beethoven, one thing in terms of why he chose the trio instead of the string quartet, he was very concerned that he was going to be compared to his teacher, Haydn, who was arguably the greatest string quartet composer ever in some ways. Well, maybe until Beethoven came around. And
the father of the string
the
quartet.
father of the string
Grandfather?
quartet.
Father?
Grandfather. Either.
Father.
But he was so nervous that he wouldn't be able to start his career as a composer on the right foot if he were doing quartets. And so he chose the piano trio, which was, I mean, it was written for, Haydn wrote trios, Mozart wrote trios, but they never became as powerful pieces of music the way that Beethoven left music for this ensemble. And I think that the piano parts are really intriguing because, especially in Opus 1, number 1, the music is really delicately written. There's always clarity, and actually it's really on the pianist to make sure that the balance is good. But Beethoven does his best to help you throughout all of the music. But then in the Archduke Trio, it's a totally different sound world. The music is going from, in Opus 1, number 1, it's very classical, very refined, almost Mozartian, very Haydn-like. In Archduke, the music is totally different. There are far more, what I would say, classically romantic gestures. You'll hear at the very opening, there's a chordal melody. It's very, very noble and majestic. And all around the piece, there are kind of unusual things that he includes. So, for example, in the last movement, there's an entire section where Matt has to play an impossibly hard cello line, where the piano's just playing tremolos. And it's almost like the sound of like a hammered dulcimer that he might have heard in Vienna. And so you can hear a little bit, especially in the folk dance of the last movement, he's incorporating the sounds of his world into the piano and mimicking them, and it's not just a straight-laced classical, square piano part. And so that's a lot of what Beethoven does in terms of the writing. But maybe before we go, maybe we can just talk about our experience playing trios in general, and then just what it's like working on these pieces. Do you want to go?
Sure.
I have to say, what I sort of rediscovered and discovered anew this week was the way that Beethoven can put the most profound thing you've ever heard next to the most fun, jaunty little dance thing, and he has no problem doing that. And so bringing those characters alive, in such close musical proximity, was really, really fun. I also, as Julio was talking about, there's such a vast palette of sounds and sound worlds that he writes in such a short amount of time. The third movement of the Archduke Trio is sort of meditative, and I think it's heavenly music. You're really transported to a different place. And then, it's a set of theme and variations that, one flows into the next, and you don't say, oh, here's theme, variation 1, variation 2. It flows so gracefully and naturally, and it's an evolution, and you're following. And it goes attacca into the last movement, which is kind of just a jaunt, I think. And it's really fun to be able to go from the most delicate, personal, human, small, intimate musical moments to these raucous moments where it almost sounds like a symphony to me. So that's been the most fun this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Trio playing in general is something that is very, very fun for us to do. And it's very different from playing for us in a string quartet. The nature of the trio means that the two string instruments, the violin and the cello, have more solo material, more prominent material, more sort of activity. Whereas a quartet, you always have the sense that everything you do has to be even more integrated into the group. And in the trio, you are required, just because of the nature of the sound of the piano, that when you play a solo line, that you really play a solo line. And so it's quite fun. And as a cellist, I will say that trios do challenge the technique of the instrument in a different way from string quartets. Not that one is harder or easier, but that it's less baseline focused, and more just a duet and trio instrument. So it's a lot of fun. I will say though, on the other side of that, to really get piano trio playing up to the highest level, it does take that same level of focus as a string quartet to be totally integrated in sound, and we have to exercise listening to such an incredible degree. And that's, for me, I will say, playing this whole week has been so fun, because I feel like the three of us were really in sync with each other as far as listening and responding to each other's sounds, and that's what's really fun about playing chamber music, I would say. So
yeah,
what do you think?
For me, so I've been playing piano trios for a long time professionally, and I mean, obviously we're all professionals, but in a group that has been together for a very long time.
What are you trying to say, Julio?
That I'm cheating on my trio, that's all. No. But and actually that's one of the more fascinating things to me, because having spent so much time with the same two people, you get very used to like very specific tendencies, very specific kind of gestural things that tend to happen. And so to do a piece that I've played, like Archduke, I played a lot with my trio, and to play it with two very different people, and then to adjust your own concept of the piece thanks to those influences, is a really great and rewarding process. And I think that, you know, the fascinating thing to me is like when you look at Mozart or Haydn trios, and I would even say the same thing for Mendelssohn too, who comes afterwards. The texture, let's say the character or the profile of texture that those composers use for trio tends to be a little static. You know, like once you know that sound of Mendelssohn in a piano trio, it's always fast notes, quicksilver lines, you know, and then in the slow movements, very beautiful, and the simple song without words accompaniments. But with Beethoven, it's like every phrase is like a totally brand new concept. And I think that's a little bit what the challenge is. He's always inventing something new, trying something different, pushing things into an uncomfortable position. And it generates a lot of tension and a lot of power in the music. And it's always just a pleasure. You know, I guess the most important thing when we work on Beethoven is that it makes you really humble. You feel like you're not good enough. He reminds you that you have a long way to go to be a good musician, and we all help one another to try to get better in this process. And we're glad that you can join us on this journey that we're taking, and we look forward to performing this music for you. Again, it's on August 30 at 5 p.m., my birthday, and we'll be playing the first and last trios of Beethoven. Matt and Stella, I want to thank you guys for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us today. And as always, please visit olympicmusicfestival.org for more information about upcoming concerts. And remember to share all of the details of these concerts with your friends and family. All of these concerts are going to be available until the end of September, and we really want to make sure as many people as possible get access to them. So thank you again, and we'll see you on Sunday. Have a good night.